Hi everyone, I'm Diane Brady. I'm here with my colleague Maggie McGrath, and we are talking about the 50 over 50 list. I should mention, of course, Maggie, you are Forbes Women editor. This is the third annual list. Let's just remind people the genesis of it.
The earliest genesis was a conversation between Mika Brzezinski, the co-host of Morning Joe and founder of Know Your Value, with our chief content officer, Randall Lane. We all know we have the 30 under 30, but Mika and Randall cooked up something to highlight women over 50 who so often report feeling invisible in society and at work. And we realized collectively through opening up nominations just how many women are founding initiatives, making big changes, not just at 51 or 52, but we have some people who are creating businesses at scale at 65, 70, 79. We'll talk about Patti LaBelle, I'm sure, but
Lady Marmalade, right?
Well, more than that these days. So I think the genesis was seeing how old, outdated ideas about when to retire or slowing down are in fact old and outdated, and women are creating change at all ages.
So what's different about this year's list, Maggie?
There are two big differences I would call out. We've used judges in the past, but this year we used more than ever before because we have a lot of expertise in the over 50 community, so we tapped 12 industry experts, 3 judges per category, to help determine this list. We've received thousands of nominations, and the teams at Forbes and Know Your Value go through those nominations, pull out the most promising contenders. We are simultaneously doing our own reporting and research. All of those contenders go into a semi-finalist list that is sent to the judges. And even so, we're still doing reporting and tire kicking. There is a lot of vetting that goes into this list to ensure that who makes the final 200 are in fact women who are stepping into their power, creating businesses and change at scale. So I think that's a process difference. A content difference is there are more founders on this list than any other year before. Nearly half the list has founded, co-founded, or owns their business, which they've bought it. They consider themselves founder and owner through their ownership. And I think that just shows that women are commanding their fortunes and their wealth and taking control of their financial futures and also taking control of their companies. So some of the founders I would highlight across categories. We have Jain, the founder of Dermalogica. She sold the company to Unilever in 2015, but then she went on to found, and this is a great example of how capitalism meets impact on this list. She founded Found LA, and it is an incubator and advisor for entrepreneurs in Los Angeles. It's helped 17,000 business owners in the time that she's done it. And we have a few investors who help start Allraise, which is helping increase the number of female check writers across the U.S. So we have founders, investors, and impact all in one.
So let's talk about the categories. There are 4 of them: investment, lifestyle, innovation, impact. Why those 4? And tell us a little bit about investment, for example. I would imagine that's a list that can get challenging if you're looking for fresh faces every year.
So the genesis of the 4 categories goes back to that first year. We opened up nominations to the general public. We wanted to hear from people who should be on this list. We received 10,000 nominations that first year, and we were only going to do one list of 50 people, but we realized that there was enough stories and innovators and inspiration to do 4 lists. And so we looked for 4 general buckets. Investment includes people working on Wall Street, venture capital, fintech, crypto, anything that involves managing money. And I don't want to start this conversation talking about the problems, but since you asked, I have found, and our team has found, that as we have done this list over 3 years, it is the investment list where women are the most reticent to confirm their ages. We will do our research, we receive the nominations, and we'll reach out, to fact check and confirm. And that's where you start to get the, oh, no thanks, I'm not interested. And that could be for a variety of reasons. It could be they're planning to leave their role. It could be that they don't like any press. I don't want to attribute it to systemic ageism or
I will. I mean, I think I remember, and I, out of deference to her, one of the pioneering stockbrokers on Wall Street, when she died, it turned out she was actually 10 years older than she had been saying her entire life. And that did not surprise me, in part because I would imagine there's a lot of ageism already on Wall Street, and if you're a woman, it's exacerbated.
Exactly. And that's my hunch. Again, I don't want to over attribute something to ageism or sexism, but I do find it interesting that with the investment category, we have to push a little harder to explain to women why we're reaching out. You know, I had a conversation with a hedge fund the other day saying, you know, there is systemic sexism and ageism in this industry, and you are building something great. And so, you know, can you answer our questions? And in explaining what we're doing with the list, she actually did answer our questions. So sometimes it just takes a little bit of back and forth.
Let's focus on each list. So in the investment list, has the mix changed? You mentioned obviously crypto, fintech. Are you finding that there's a higher percentage in different categories this year than when you first started?
I think the first year we started, and this is going off my memory, so you would have to fact check me a little bit, but we also look for people who are breaking glass ceilings and who are first in their category. Mm-hmm. So Jain, the CEO of Citi, made that first list because she's the first female CEO of a major Wall Street bank. As we've gone on, when we don't do repeats on the list, that is really important to note. This is not the Forbes 400 where we are updating net worths and investigating family fortunes.
Look, you're a billionaire again this year too.
Exactly. Yeah. It's, you know, we look to refresh every year so people see a whole new class of 50 over 50. Mm-hmm. So we put Jain on the list the first year, Ms. Fraser. We're not going to repeat her. So as we look for who should be on the list in 2022, 2023, we start looking for founders. I see a lot of people, and this is really encouraging, mm-hmm. who are starting venture capital firms to invest in female-led businesses or businesses owned or founded by people from underrepresented communities. And so we see a mission-oriented mindset leading to founding investment firms that are investing in those entrepreneurs. I'm also noticing a big trend towards ESG mm-hmm. and impact investing. And these aren't new in 2023. Our call out for the list, Nancy Fund, mm-hmm. she started an impact initiative while still at JP Morgan in 2003. And she told me that it was hard to get institutional investors to call her back. In 2021, she spun that firm out in her 50s, is building her own investment venture capital vehicle, early investor in Farmers Business Network, Tesla, Solar City. So really great at spotting trends and good businesses.
Yeah, legendary. She's certainly on my radar.
Exactly. So she said 2003, hard to get phone calls back. 2021, raised Fund 4, $600 million, and her phone is ringing off the hook.
No, and I think it's interesting to point, this is not that people have lasted so long, they make it to over 50. These are people who have accomplishments over the age of 50 is really what gets you onto the list.
We really say you are stepping into your power. We have looked at people who have done really phenomenal things in their 40s, and we look at what they're doing in their 50s, and we will say, you know what? I don't think this is as powerful as what you were doing at 30 or 40, but mm-hmm. I bet you can do something more, and so we're going to check back in next year.
That's interesting. So lifestyle, who's the big call out in that category?
Well, we kind of have two, because I did a story on Patti LaBelle, mm-hmm. Philadelphia hometown hero, so a McGrath family favorite for sure, but a lot of people know Patti LaBelle for her music, but she is a tremendous cook. And in 2008, she started a comfort food brand, Patti's Good Life. Mm-hmm. She launched a sweet potato pie in 2015 that went viral. I don't know if you've seen the video, but basically...
I've seen her food. It's at Walmart, actually.
It's at Walmart and doing very, very well. So she started with hot sauces and barbecue sauces in 2008 and then built up the product line. The sweet potato pie went viral in 2015. She now has mac and cheese, chicken and biscuits, a breakfast line, and gross sales are close to $200 million. It's a licensing deal, so ultimate revenue to her is closer to $20 million a year. But she owns the business with her son. She is the majority owner, her son told me. So Patti owns 51% and he owns the rest. But she has said, you know, my food is taking me places that my singing hasn't. And then she said yet, so it sounds like she wants to go places still with her singing, but we really like to see people who are using their platform and channeling that into building businesses.
She said that was one. Who's the second one?
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Okay.
Fan favorite, won her first Oscar award just this past March.
Yep.
She told Forbes and Know Your Value, that she long thought she was going to retire at the age of 40. And so it's a really good thing she didn't. She says she is doing her most creative work at 64 than ever before. She is a children's book author. She is producing. She has a company, My Hand in Yours, which gives all of its proceeds to the Children's Hospital of LA. So we see that again, the mission. I think I mentioned earlier, a lot of them on this list are building mission-oriented businesses, and Jamie Lee
she's
Curtis
been a
is one.
very strong defender against ageism too. I remember she's one of those people who often does a lot of photos and says, "Here's what I look like unretouched, and here's what I look like," when they've done all their magic. And I think really lifting a veil on what age really looks like, not trying to disguise that fact.
And she's someone who shows up without coloring her hair. And as someone who's been getting gray hair since she was 17, I dye some of it, but I leave a lot of it as it is because of, honestly, people like Jamie Lee Curtis who say, you know what, gray is beautiful too.
Yeah. So innovation, I would presume that's very much focused on founders, entrepreneurs, Silicon Valley type pioneers.
Technology, so science, technology, math, healthcare. Healthcare is a lot. AI, and aerospace. There we go. I knew there was a big one because our call out on this list, we do have a lot of founders, but we could not resist. There's someone whose accomplishments just screamed 50 over 50, and that's Dr. Peggy Whitson.
Oh, astronaut.
Exactly. She has more time in space than any other woman, and 675 days in space as of this year. She retired from NASA in 2018, wasn't sure if she was really done or not, but then Axiom Space, which is it's a private company building a commercial space station, knocked on her door, said, hey, can we use your expertise to help build a commercial space station? She became the director of space flight, and she went up as the commander of Axiom 2 at the end of May, and that made her the first woman to command a private space flight to the ISS. So she's really impressive, and we had a great chat about the innovations and problem solving that you do in space, but also the technology and science that she is spearheading when she goes up to the ISS. Because I am not a scientist, so a lot of this it almost sounds like science fiction to me. I don't want to say surprising, because anyone who follows the industry will be less surprised. But if you're not someone who follows the day-to-day machinations of NASA, as I am not, it was really interesting to talk to her. She's a biochemist, so she goes up there and she does experiments, and there are implications for cancer research that she is forging up there. Yeah.
Okay, and the last list is impact. I get a lot of pitches on this, so I imagine that's a very competitive list to get on.
It's a very competitive list. We broadly, through the submissions, see a lot of women who spend most of their careers working for someone else and then hitting their 50s and deciding to start something new. In many cases, that is for profit, but there are also a lot of nonprofit efforts.
Giving back.
Or in the case of Catherine Coleman Flowers, she calls herself an accidental activist. She started her career as a teacher. She is the call out for the impact list, our featured photo at the top. She is an environmental justice advocate, and she is exposing and bringing attention and change to what she calls America's dirty secret. The fact that there are homes in America that have sewage just openly running in their backyard. And in her hometown of Lowndes, Alabama, residents were being prosecuted for this because the burden of maintaining home sewage systems were on the individual homeowner. So she has been advocating for change. She founded the Center for Rural Enterprise and Environmental Justice. She won a MacArthur Genius Award. All of this was over 50, by the way. Her organization she founded in 2019. In 2020, she got the MacArthur Genius Award. And it's an issue that she told me that, when she first started it, people said, the media is not going to care about it. And she said, what I have found is people just don't know that this is happening. She started in her hometown of Lowndes, but she said it's all over. She pointed to a community in New York State, not too far away, that has this issue. So
is impact basically a surrogate for philanthropy? Is that the way you think about this category, or how do you judge impact?
It is law, policy, education, social entrepreneurs, and nonprofit leaders. So it is, I look at it broadly as people who are moving the needle on issues that matter most to Americans. Some are doing that by leading institutions. Claudine Gay became the first Black president of Harvard earlier this summer. She is on the list. Catherine, as we mentioned, is talking about and addressing environmental justice. We have politicians. We have Nikki Haley, who is, running to become the first female president of the United States. We look at all sorts of impact.
It's interesting. So I want to just step back a bit about the context in which this list, now in its third year, is coming out, which is we've seen, I don't say a war on women, but certainly with regard to what's happened with the Supreme Court decisions around Roe v. Wade and, continued concerns about sexism, ageism, et cetera. I mean, how do you cover these issues day by day and then you do this list? Are you finding that the overall environment is impacting the conversations that you have with these women, or even their views of the list and the importance of this?
I think there is the consistent theme year over year is that women of all ages are happy to see this list because women over 50 have told us they feel invisible, and women under 50 are fearful of the effects of ageism when they get to that level. And there was a Harvard Business Review study that came out just a few months ago about how ageism affects all ages of women in the workplace. So women in between 20 and 40 were demeaned, their expertise was questioned.
People think they're going to get pregnant and leave any minute. Yeah.
It used to be, or the researchers thought that the 40 to 60 set, they had the thought that maybe that's the sweet spot, it's the Goldilocks, right? Not too young, not too old. But it found out that these women were discriminated against at work for, assumptions about caregiving responsibilities. That's the sandwich age, right? You have aging parents and you might have children that you're caring for at the same time. The study also found that employers are assuming symptoms of menopause might be, or premenopause might be affecting the women working in those ages. And then 60 and over reported, I don't feel like my workplace is investing in my professional development and valuing my expertise. So I'm just going to go, I think I'd be better off starting my own company. Yeah. And then that in turn is what we see across the submissions. Not necessarily people saying I felt ignored, but there are some cases of that, or there are some cases, if you look over the course of the 3 years of doing this, investment bankers who spend decades as an investment banker helping with IPOs realize they know how to do it, and they start their own company and take their company public.
Great. Well, it's a terrific list. I hope that everyone checks it out, of course. And I would be remiss not to mention the 30-50, because there are events tied to this. Talk a little bit about that. I know that is not, that's going to be a few months after this, but how important is the community that's being built out of these lists?
I would like to think it's incredibly important. The 30-50 Summit is a summit that we do that connects the under 30 community, the women of the under 30, with the women of the 50 over 50. And the twin goals are networking and mentorship. And they're separate goals, right? I think women want to connect with each other at their peer level, but then a lot of people want to mentor up and down. I think we have a lot to teach each other across the generations. And I spoke to someone at this past 30-50 Summit, works in chemical engineering, and she said to me, there's no one at my company who's a mentor, and I got here and I met someone, so thank you.
That's great.
And it's important to hear those stories, I think. It's important to find your person at work, because I know that my peers and mentors have been responsible for me getting to where I am. But it's arguably easier in media than it is in chemical engineering.
Right. No, I think it's very true. And I think, of course, I certainly hear a lot of positive feedback myself. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Third list. Hope people check it out. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you.